Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Welcome, TCS Nation, and thanks for tuning in to the Tackling College Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Franco, and still not alongside me due to social distancing is in his current role as tutor, disciplinarian, PE teacher, gatekeeper to Wi-Fi and snacks, co-host Chris Legates. Good morning, my friend. How are you this lovely day?
Yeah, we're a little more than 6 feet apart, aren't we? We're about 60 miles apart right now.
Just a touch.
Yeah, and being a fourth grade teacher for my son right now, I am taking all of those roles very seriously. So my son was almost the first kid that I suspended from my in-house school system. So the disciplinarian factor has been tight, but I get to switch hats and be with you today, and I'm thrilled about our guest, an old friend of mine for sure.
Right. So our guest today is Alison Foley. And Alison, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark and Chris, for having me join us. This is great.
It is. Listen, and honor your time, let's dive right in. So, Alison, can you give our listeners a history of your background from your days as an assistant coach at James Madison to now running Foley Athletic Advising?
Sure. So I actually did my master's degree after graduating from college down at James Madison, where I was the grad assistant for the program, and stayed there 2 years after full time as an assistant, and then. One year after that, I went down to Angelo State University, a Division II school in Texas, and was the head coach of the women's soccer program down there, and taught in their kinesiology department, which is what I got my master's in. And then that was a quick stint. BC opened up, and my dad was like, "You've got to apply. You've got to come home." I'm like, "Dad, I'm 25. I'm not getting the Boston College job." But I threw my resume up there, and just to see, what could happen, and was up there one month later interviewing, and then spent the next 22 years of my life as the head coach there. Wow. Which was wonderful. Yeah, a lot of fun. And then a year and a half ago, I transitioned into a consulting business. And now I'm running Foley Athletic Advising, which is a college consulting business for prospective student athletes and helping them navigate this recruiting process. Right.
Wow. So can you go into how recruiting has changed over the years, perhaps maybe touch on the pros and cons, and then have there been any fundamental shifts when it comes to training from your aspect?
Yeah, I think it's such an important part of the process, recruiting, and it has shifted in certainly my 22 years a lot. What happened really, I would say probably about 8 years ago, is it just got really young, at the highest levels of Division I and really at all divisions. And it started occupying the majority of your profession, and you're talking to eighth graders, asking them, to make a pretty big decision, right? Where you're going to go to college. You're asking an eighth grader, what do you want to study? I mean, I didn't even know what kinesiology meant when I was in eighth grade,
Right.
And for me personally, that was, it sort of got disenchanting, how early. And I guess having a daughter that was the same age as the kids I was recruiting, and I told her to wait until like 10th or 11th grade. I started feeling a little hypocritical on what I was doing. And I just felt like sort of at this conflict, like what professionally, because if I wasn't going to do it, Anson at UNC was out there, Duke was out there, Florida State was out there. So I needed to be doing that early recruiting for professional reasons, but I just morally started having a lot of difficulty with it. So the good news is there was in last April 15th, there was some legislation put in to prevent the pace of early recruiting in Division I, and that is there's no communication in any form, written direct communication, text, phone calls until June 15th after your sophomore year.
Yep.
And then unofficial visits can't start to August 1st. And, walking around kids in braces, and 7th and 8th graders, it's just too young. So I think that those changes were needed, and I think they're excellent, and I think it's going to bring down the transfer rate because kids are going to wait and know themselves first and foremost, and certainly, have more information to make a better, a more accurate decision on where they belong.
Sure. Well, and how about on the training side of the equation?
Yeah, I think in terms of the training, there's a lot more training in what you're able to do. I think strength and conditioning departments have certainly lots of programs have a full-time strength and conditioning coach. I think technology has really increased, GPS trackers, heart rate monitors. So how much where you are on the field, the video analysis has become a huge teaching tool. So I think from a technology standpoint, it's been a really big increase in how you can train and really teach your athletes.
Yeah. So sort of, you think that's trickling down from the pro side of the equation?
I think that it is, and I think it's just also a byproduct of where we are, in our tech field, and how advanced we are in our tech field. But people are recording and tracking, and it's certainly getting very specific.
Yeah.
And do you think there are any negatives to that?
Or
are the positives outweighing?
I think the positives certainly outweigh. You're finding out more detail. You're finding out, the hydration of your athletes. A lot of this is for injury prevention reasons. Did they do too heavy of a load this week where we need to give them a recovery day, or do we have to? Are they fit and ready to go? Half a game. Are they fit and ready to go 70 minutes? I think these are really good things to keep, our athletes healthier.
Right.
So I think it's a positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, that is important information, especially from the technical aspect, because the NCAA does no favors to anybody playing 3 games in 7 days. So that data is very important as far as putting together training sessions and monitoring players' health. I know that they like to talk about being about student athlete welfare, but as you and I know, Al, 20 plus games in a 2.5-3 month window is doing no favors to student athletes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really good thing to study periodization and track. Just tracking athletes. You're right. It's sometimes. I think the old school, we always thought, keep on pushing, and I think as professionals, we've really had to buy into sometimes less is actually more, especially in season.
Yep. Well, hey, first of all, I want to congratulate you on your second book now, The Elusive Full Ride Scholarship. What was your inspiration for writing this book? And I've known you for so long, and I never asked you this question too, was there always an interest in being an author?
No. The inspiration, my first book is How to Coach Girls. My co-author for both books is also a neighbor, and growing up in our neighborhood, her 2 daughters were best friends with my daughter. And for the first book, whenever there was issues with their daughters, or, team, or the coach did something, or one of her daughters maybe was dropped down a level, or there was drama on the team, she'd come down and be like, "What's going on? Listen to what's going on with my daughter's teams," and I would advise if I could offer advice. And one day she came down to me and she's like, "Look, I've got this great idea. We've got to co-author a book, How to Coach Girls." I said, "I'm not an author. I'm a coach. I'm not going to write a book." And she said, "No, you have so much, knowledge, and you can help so many people if you put this information in a book." And I kept saying no for a while. And she presented me with what I thought was a really, alarming stat, and that was that 70% of the kids by the age of 13 quit organized sports, and girls at 6 times the rate as boys. And so that really got me thinking. And I know I'm just such a big advocate of girls participating in sports all their lives, but especially at middle school. So that was the game changer for me, that stat really. And then we got to it. Out came the book in 2018, and then a couple of years after that, she's like, you got to write one on getting recruited. Everybody wants to get recruited, and there's so many tricky parts to it. And you've been in the game for so long, and it coincides with my company, really well, the athletic advising company. So I said, okay, let's do it. So and I do both books really are to help people, and between the NCAA rules, between the different divisions, between what to do as a freshman and all through the process, and it's a tricky, the recruiting process is tricky to navigate when you're not in, you haven't been, you don't have parents that were, athletes, and even if you did, it's changed dramatically. So, both of the books were really done with my, my neighbor really urging me that, I had some information inside of me that could help other people.
And that's interesting you said that, because Mark and I started this whole project by being at the sidelines of a showcase tournament, like you've been in a million times. And, just hearing people talk about the college recruiting process and how much misinformation there is out there, Alison.
Right.
It was one of the things that we said, well, how do we educate people? You can't go around and grab every parent and be like, hey, listen, do you realize there's no scholarship money at Division III? Do you you'll have parents that go around and they're saying, did you know she's getting a scholarship at this Division III school? And you're like, no, that's not true, because you can't, So, there were things that when we decided to put this together, the same way that your neighbor came to you and said, hey, share your knowledge in this. And to me, it was, wow, I didn't realize, and maybe you're in the same boat too now, I didn't realize how much misinformation there was out there.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%.
So again, our podcast is geared for student athletes and their parents to, as you even use the same word too, to help them navigate their way through the college recruiting process. As one of the most successful college coaches in the last 20 years, what advice do you have for student athletes on what it really takes to get to the next level of their sport? Let's be honest. I mean, you've recruited some of the highest level players in the country. What does it really take to get to that level?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, making sure you're in the proper environment, and by the proper environment, I mean the right coach to push you, in the right group of players to challenge you. We're only as good as where we are presently, and it's you're at the top of a team and kind of practicing 1 or 2 days a week. That's not going to cut it at the next level. So, I think making sure that you're playing in the highest league in your area that you possibly can is certainly helpful. And you got to do some extra work. You got to be committed to do strength and conditioning. You got to be committed to do some extra individual training. To really push yourself to be at that next level. And then you got to get out there and get to the right places, right? You hope that your club team will give you the exposure. You also have to take some time to get out to these colleges and play in their ID clinics and see what the other level is of players that they're recruiting, and the ones that are already recruited. Do you end up to that level? So, really making sure that for me is the first thing, that you're challenging yourself and you're in the most competitive environment possible.
Let me kind of piggyback on that question too. So, there's so many clubs now, and Premier Soccer, just like AAU basketball or junior softball, is saturated with teams. There's too many teams. Mm-hmm. But if a kid is a talented player, Al, do you think that they should stay at a smaller club with a good coach, or try to go to those bigger named clubs, and instead of being maybe the top 1 or 2 or 3 on their team, they're now player 11 or 12, but they're at a higher, let's say, perceived club than they were before? Do you think there's a right answer to that?
I think it's I think it's more that I don't think there's a wrong answer to that. I think either situation can work. I had said that I think challenging yourself at the, in the most competitive environment is important. So playing with better players is going to get you better. If you're putting it in, you're going to get better. If they're bringing you to higher level, showcases, the competition's going to push you. It may not work out logistically for you to get to that top team. So you might have to be, staying closer to home, especially when there's 5 other siblings in your family. So then you might be that best player on a team that has a good coach, but you're the player that's going to have to get, jump in and get some extra personal training. You're going to have to go to these ID clinics if your team isn't going to these bigger showcases to get some of the college coaches to see you. So, in an ideal world, you can go to that more competitive team that's going to get more exposure. But if not, you'll still get recruited, and you just have to, be a little bit more creative in your process.
That's a great piece of advice. Mark?
So Chris and I have been discussing how colleges might be impacted by the lockdown that we all find ourselves in. We've actually put out several short videos addressing the topic, and now, unfortunately, seeing some of the negative aspects come to fruition. Alison, do you have any thoughts on how this might play out and what changes we might all be in for?
Yeah, I've been on a couple different phone calls. I was just on a call with U.S. Soccer, yesterday, and I think there's hopes of club soccer coming into a modified small group training in June. And I'm no expert. This is just kind of what I've heard from a few different venues.
Sure.
Then July and August we might have some team training, and I think there's hopes that we get back into competition in September. And I think they have a task team that's giving them a lot of information in U.S. Soccer. So I would believe for them to say it on the call that they've had some really good resources giving them some information on how this might happen. In terms of high school and college, I think that we're going to probably see in college some modified seasons, whether we come in later in preseason. Certainly have to, abide by state regulations, whether that's before you go into sports medicine and out to the field, you get your temperature checked, and then before training, and maybe that goes on every day. And the games are likely to be minimized. And I've heard from quite a few different divisions that you may play your conference and then maybe a couple local non-conference games that don't require too much travel.
Sure.
So, and then high school, a lot of that, is going to be governor delegated and told to that, especially the public schools. So, I'm hopeful. I think we're going to get back out in the field. I think we'll see some modification, but I think we're going to get the kids out there playing.
Right. Now, how are you advising, or what are you advising, let's say, to student athletes / parents, of kids that are missing these showcases? We've talked about on one of our videos, you have to be super creative now, sending short videos of yourself out in the backyard, doing drills or whatever it might be. Are you getting questions about that, or do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I think that's been probably the most common question is, how do I keep my recruiting process moving forward in a pandemic, right? And I think, like you said, film, sending, it's a great time to make a highlight tape if you have some film, right, of yourself. And also, I think it's really good to do a skills film and have somebody tape you,
right.
Turn with your back towards goal as a strength, knocking a long ball as your strength. Put yourself through some cones if you're super technical. Coaches have the time. They're in their house just like us. And maybe in season, they wouldn't have time, or even out of season. If they were with their teams and on the road recruiting, they'd probably, get a video and be like, I don't know. They're studying the videos now. Partly because there's no other way to recruit.
We said the exact same thing.
Yeah. And then this also gives, the prospective student athletes, a really good opportunity to study, the school a little bit more, do some extra research. Many schools are offering virtual tours and virtual college fairs. Schools are also offering one-on-one meetings with an academic counselor or a current student or an alum, which I think is great. Mm-hmm. Teams are also, I know a lot of Division III schools are delegating one day for their team to get on Zoom and have any recruits that are interested go on Zoom with them and ask them questions. It's another great positive. Coaches are on Zoom. You can almost prepare like it's an unofficial visit and get dressed up and get on Zoom and be prepared with your questions and I think we can keep it going. You know, you can keep training. It's an opportunity to improve. You know, your left foot isn't any good. Get out there and work it. You know.
Right.
So, and then, you know, I think colleges are really being creative with what they're putting online for you to learn about the school a little bit more. You can also do some ACT and SAT extra work, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So you know, those are a couple of things that I think you can do to kind of keep things in the right direction.
And again, we're not trying to portray this being super negative, but I mean, I think, you know, Chris and I, again, on one of these videos, we're discussing, you know, do we have to start looking at institutions differently now if it's a small school, you know, and perhaps it's a small program, the endowment might be small, you know, do you have to take a much harder look at potentially committing to a program like that if, you know, there's a chance that, you know, the finances aren't there to maybe continue the program. You know, we're seeing, you know, unfortunately schools close due to this. Yeah.
Yep. You know, I think it is a stark reality. I think we are going to see, you know, a few schools either significantly cut back on what their program can offer, or, you know, travel budgets. Certainly travel budgets are going to be, I'm sure, be affected.
Right.
Amount of coaches, coaching staff. You know, you might lose a coach on a coaching staff, which again is a setback from, you know, from having, you know, more people on staff. And then I do think you're right, Mark. I think unfortunately some college doors are going to close. You know, some schools are just going to shut down due to, you know, not having the resources to keep them up and running.
Yeah. Yeah, the refunding is a big issue. You know, the refunding of room and board and meal plans.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Chris.
I mean, we just saw with the University of Cincinnati cut their men's program, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and we've seen 3 or 4 schools already that have shut their doors. But the interesting thing, Al, that you brought up too, is that with the cutting of budgets, losing a coach is a definite possibility and a big thing, and also having your recruiting budget probably slashed maybe means there's certain tournaments you won't be able to attend, which means now the prospective student athlete has to be even more creative about catching the eye of someone.
I agree. I 100% agree with that, Chris, for sure. I think we're going to see that.
Yeah, this is some interesting times for sure. So Mark and I do plenty of these presentations to youth clubs and players about the recruiting process. And when we put up the slides about the amount of scholarships available at the different levels, or actually how low the participation rates are, that, you know, 7 or 8% of kids are only playing college. There's a collective gasp in the audience. So my question to you, Al, is, do you think club coaches or club programs and club coaches are really doing a good enough job educating parents and family or players and families about how hard it is to play in college and also how hard it is to get a scholarship?
You know, I think that they probably don't. A lot of them don't even know that stat. Is what I found, Chris. And I mean, I think my in one of the first paragraphs, if not the first paragraph of my book, that statement is made, and I'm sure it's gonna, you know, people are gonna buy the book to get recruited and be like, "What's going on here?" This is harder than I thought, but you know, I think that part of to sort of justify the role of the club coach, part of their job is to convince people that they are going to get recruited, right?
Right.
And, you know, so I do think that it can be sometimes misleading, you know, or the information from the club might just not be there, because that's sort of part of what they're supposed to convince their audience, right? That they are going to, you know, be the right club to help them through the process and get them where they want to be.
Right. There should be, you know, we always talk about transparency and honesty. So, you know, I think from both sides, I mean, as a college coach, our recruits, you know, they demand and should be given transparency and honesty during the recruiting process. But oftentimes the club programs, where I don't know if they've prepared kids good enough, well enough for all the things that are ahead of them in the college game, both on the field and off the field. But also, I think going back to that misinformation, a lot of the stuff that when we walk around a complex on a Sunday afternoon, that the information the parents have gotten, where does it come from? And I'm not sure. And I don't know how we can do a better. How do we do a better job of educating so that, people realize that men's soccer Division I only has 9.9, that women only have 14, and that not every school has that too, by the way, so
exactly. And that's if you're fully funded, which
fully funded.
Right.
So, how do you get that apart? Because I think there's a lot of kids when they go play U14 ball, every parent on the sideline is looking at their investment in Premier Soccer as coming out on the back end of getting a scholarship in college. Right.
Yeah. I don't have the answer to how we get this truly, across to the families and the player. I think again, they just believe that it's a natural transition. I'm putting in this amount of money for a club sport, so I expect, on the flip side, my return, which is a scholarship, right? And so I just think it's a tough thing to get out there. I don't think social media necessarily helps because you always see all the kids that got recruited, right?
Right.
So you think everyone, if you haven't been recruited, you think everybody around you is being recruited except you. You're the only one that hasn't landed. But the actual percentage of kids not ending up, there's more, as we know, a lot more high school players not finding, not going and playing a sport in college than they are than that are. So.
Right. And I wanted to ask you kind of a question off of that. I really, really enjoyed your, if you want to call it a combine or ID clinic that you did last summer. And I know that I'm not sure if this summer, if it's going to happen again, but because of the pandemic or if you'll find a different date, I thought it was awesome. And because clearly because you've been a college coach, you know what college coaches are looking at. And did your process of getting all those players together, you kind of went through like a vetting process. You did like profiles of these kids, didn't you?
We did. Well, what I did was I started with the club directors and explained what was going on and what we wanted to do, and then asked, for their top players in their club, and they would just kind of put them in an order for me. And then, I knew some of the players, just doing U.S. soccer stuff. I kind of knew a lot of the top players in the area, so I was able to have sort of my own list, and just from recruiting at BC and seeing some of the younger kids. So, but I did rely a lot on club coaches giving me that information.
Yeah, I thought it was well done in the level of play. I mean, as you well know, there are so many showcases and ID camps and combines nowadays that often the level of player is saturated. There's not the way that you did it was awesome, because I really think that if, regardless of your level of coaching, if you were Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, whatever, if you were there that day, you found something that probably was going to help you. And I thought, that's what the ID camps and combines should be, is that everybody walks out of there as a college coach saying, hey, this was awesome.
Well, we hope so. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we did push it was going to be June 13th. We pushed it back to August 8th. So we hope it takes off. But I think it's easier, for the kids, it's really good, because if they go to these huge showcases where there's 40-something fields, coach may or may not ever even go to their field, never mind, identify them. And here it was just one field. The kids were going to get seen, and they were going to get time. The coaches only had one field to study. And for the college coaches, it kind of shifted through a lot of the players and brought sort of the top ones right to them. And then, they could kind of see what might fit best for their program. So thank you for being there. We loved having you.
I can't wait. I hope it happens again. Yeah, I hope it happens in August, Well, listen, here's the big thing now. We have gone from difficult questions. You have coached in NCAA tournament games. You've been in a Final Four with your teams in 2010. But what you're going to go through right now is nothing like anything you've ever been part of, Allison. This is the getting to know you portion of the TCS interview.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Mark has queued up some music here that I can't hear because I'm at the satellite studio, but I know it is Getting to Know You by Julie Andrews. Yeah,
that's lovely. It's a lovely tune.
Okay.
But,
all right, Mark.
But that's enough of that.
You're on there.
So I'm just grabbing my long mic here and putting on the game show host voice. So question number one, Allison, if we were to search your phone, what would be the top 3 played songs or artists?
Okay, so top 3 played songs or artists. So I don't really have a genre of music that I like. I'm sort of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I love Hello by Adele. I listen to that a lot.
Sure.
All of Me by John Legend. I love that. And I'm an Elton John fan, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you'd hear a little bit of different music, but
A smattering.
That's what I mostly listen to. Yes,
A smattering. Yes, a smattering.
Yeah.
That's a good term, right? Smattering of. Question number 2. Who is the most famous person you have in your contact list?
Yeah. So I almost feel like a 4-way tie, but I think I'm going to say Jill Ellis, the former U.S. Women's National Team coach.
Sure.
Just because she's riding a high right now, and she's done so many wonderful things, and
Definitely.
she's a name in a lot of houses right now. So I'll go with Jill.
Perfect. And do you have a favorite quote or quotes?
I always like, and I think it's really, really pertinent for the time we're in right now, don't count the days, make the days count.
I like that. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah.
Especially in a pandemic.
That's right. Next, can you give our listeners a little known fact about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm a certified yoga instructor, and a lot of people just think, oh, soccer. And I actually love yoga as much as I love soccer.
Wow.
Which isn't usually going hand in hand because soccer players have no flexibility. So,
which hence is why I really had to buy into it, and I got into it.
That's awesome.
Believe it or not, I've been taking classes. My gym has them online live. Of course, you can watch after, but they put them up on either Instagram or Facebook, so it's kind of neat.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Question number 5. Who's been the biggest influence in your life?
I'd probably have to say my dad. He's coached me on so many, in my youth years on many different teams. Through college, I don't think he missed a game. And when I was at BC, he probably was like the loudest person cheering in the crowd. So
that's great.
He's dedicated and he's passionate about sports, and I think that's had a big influence on me.
Wonderful. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose?
I'd go out to dinner with just about anyone if I could go out to dinner, right now.
This is true. It'd have to be. I need to put curbside pickup now on that.
Curbside pickup, yeah. Exactly. So I have 2. I have my best friend Marco. I'd obviously love to go out to dinner with him right now somewhere.
Yeah.
And a person that I always wanted to just pick her brain and sit down with, and I just think she's marvelous, is Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
Okay.
And question 7, if you weren't doing what you're currently doing, what do you think you would be up to?
I initially went to college to be a psychologist.
Right.
And I would still love to do that. I think coaching is probably very close to that. But I love people, and I love trying to, listen and help. So I think I would go into
definitely one of the hats you wear as a coach, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Question number 8. What is one thing you believe that others might think is crazy?
So, I think people may think this is crazy. I'm a big believer in reincarnation, and I swear that this cardinal in my yard is my brother, and he comes to the window in the bird feeder every day.
Oh, wow.
And so I believe in reincarnation. I believe that I see my brother in a cardinal.
Good.
Well, it's funny. Mark and I both have a couple of those kind of situations too with our moms. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And next, what is your morning ritual?
Morning ritual. I walk my dog every morning.
Nice. And lastly, what book are you currently reading or have just read?
So I'm in the middle of reading The Second Mountain by David Brooks, which is actually a really cool book, by the way. It talks about the first mountain. It's sort of one of those meaning of life books, and
sure.
Your first mountain is all about your career and getting to the top of your profession, and and then the second mountain is sort of all about relationships and connecting, and yeah, so it's I'm in the middle of it, but it's been great.
It's been
a good book.
Wonderful.
Whoa.
Breeze.
Whoa. I'll tell you what, Alison Foley coming through, like, not even breaking a sweat with these questions. Remember those days? Yeah, remember those days when those coaches would sit on the hot seat, Mark, and they'd be drenched. They would be out of the getting to know you. They'd be exhausted. There's no problem for her. No problem.
This was a can of corn.
What does the crowd have to say about that? Let's see. Now, Mark is playing. We can't hear it.
It's not a soccer ref, but it is a baseball hitting out of the park. So.
Yes. So Alison Foley hit it out of the park in the getting to know you section, which
this is true.
I'll tell you what.
Thanks, Chris.
And I'm almost 40 of these podcasts now, and we've had the getting. She's right at the top. I'm going to tell you, that's number one. She doesn't need a towel or Gatorade right now. She's good to go.
Smooth sailing. Smooth sailing.
Well, all right. I'm going to turn it back into a different direction now, and this is a kind of a complicated question, for people who are in the game like you and I are, Al. But no doubt we're seeing the women's game get more competitive domestically and internationally as more countries put more money into club programs. We're seeing Barcelona, we're seeing Real Madrid, countries all over the world where their clubs are now putting much more money into the women's game. Mm-hmm. What do you think we're doing right and wrong on the club sides in the U.S. as far as development is concerned? That's that buzzword, development. And is the college game growing at a rate to help continue producing successful international players for us, for the USA?
Right. I think we're attempting to recreate a European model and a club model that we see where the youth teams follow under a professional team. And, we have the Portland Thorns. We have a few that are connected directly to the highest level, the professional level here, which is similar, to what we see in Europe. And what I think is good is you're under the same development, you're under the same philosophy, you're under the same system of play. So it trends in a really good direction, to get you. So you already kind of know what's at that next level. In Real Madrid, those kids, if they're on U10, they know exactly what's going on in the expectations and how the team and how the first level team plays. And so I think that's something that we're trying to do. One of the things that I think we still get, run into is how many teams we have in this country and how many clubs we have in this country. And it does end up diluting some of the talent where in Europe, they all are, going, there is a distinct number one team that you want to try to play for. And we don't have that necessarily here, but I think we're trying to replicate that model. I think that in terms of us filtering college kids into the professional leagues, I definitely think that kids are willing to look more at international programs because they're getting so much better in other countries. Before, when you take a look when it was the Rusa League, right? Back then, and that's it's probably like close to 18 years ago, 17 years ago, when Rusa started. Everyone, if you were good enough to play professional soccer, you went into that draft, and that was it. Because international soccer was so low. Now, kids are like, I'm going to England, I'm going to France, because they're good. And I think they're, and that's not to knock the NWSL at all. I think it's really good too. But people are catching up. And I think because they follow, there's more funds certainly being invested in the women's side all around the world. And they're properly training now, and they're modeling the system of the men's side in Europe and developing them under their model at a younger age.
Oh, that's a great answer. And I got kind of a spin-off question to that too. I played for Sasha Shirowski, and we've had him on the show as well.
Yep.
Clearly, about the 2-semester model that he's brought forth to be voted on, which is going to come up again as they haven't voted because of the pandemic. But how did you feel? And will that make the college women's game better if that was something that was amended and allowed to happen? Would a 2-semester model at the women's college game, first of all, be supported by female student athletes? Would they want that? And secondly, would that be a help to make the college game even more of an international or professional league or professional farm system, if we want to call it that?
Right. So I remember 2 years ago, I'm not sure if it was the NCAA or it might have been the ACC had sent out a questionnaire about that to it was the ACC, I believe. And I don't know the exact breakdown, but I knew more girls did not want that model. And, I think it's tough, and I get it. I get it from a periodization. I get it from, resting and having less games in a week and how great that would be. I think being in season psychologically for that long, it's tough, and I think off season, you need to kind of like focus a little bit more about developing the athlete, not about your opponent, and making your team better and helping individuals get better. So that's my personal. I get it. I know Sasha's a very big fan of it, and I understand it, and I do think there's some benefits. But I would lean a little bit towards it not looking like that.
Right, and you had the best players in the country. I mean, you every year in the top 20. So if you were to poll your 25 or 30 kids, you probably would have said that maybe half would be in favor and half wouldn't have been, or is that even a little bit too much?
I'd say probably less than half.
Wow. That's great. That's an awesome thing to hear. Mark.
So we'll wrap up this last question, Alison. We know that you've worked with international players in the past. Can you speak about the pros and cons of bringing international players into a stateside program? And furthermore, is there something that they bring to the team that perhaps would not be present in a U.S.-only type of squad?
Yeah, it's always worked out favorable for us. I don't necessarily know in the beginning. I think you have to, as a coach and a team, understand that there's a lot of transitions when you bring an international player over. And, Laura George was somebody we brought over from France, played for the French national team, and ultimately, after graduating her senior year from BC, was voted season #1 defender of the year. But the beginning wasn't like that. The beginning was a struggle because even, English is her second language, and I'd be saying two touch, and she'd be going all over the grid, and I was like, touche, I'm trying to speak French to her, and communication is huge in the sport, and if you're trying to translate information given to you, it's a tough environment for them to be in. We train probably a lot more than internationals do, so that's tough for them to get used to. But I think they bring so much passion to the game. And once they start understanding sort of, the routine and what it looks like, and understanding, that this isn't going to be a one game a week scenario. We play 3 and you don't choose to take one off. You got to play all 3. And
right.
Once they understand the routine and their bodies adapt to the routine, I think they can bring, incredible diversity to your group. They can bring, a passion of growing up and watching the sport, very different than how men or women have to do it over here.
Sure.
And it's just great diversity. Just learning from different people and having that international person just teaching you about their culture. And I think it's a great thing.
That's
for
great.
Both sides.
Yeah. So, Alison,
awesome.
How can listeners get in touch with you?
I'm sorry?
How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Oh, how can they get in touch with me?
Yeah.
They can email me. My email is allison@foleyathleticadvising.com.
Mm-hmm.
Our book is coming out on May 18th, and that can be purchased through Audrey Press or on Amazon if they're interested. And I'm always happy to talk, and communicate with anybody that we can help.
Yeah, we'll definitely put all of that information up on the show notes so people can access it. But listen, Alison, thanks again. We truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
This was great, guys. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
awesome.
you for having me.
And all the best to you and your family. And stay well. And hang on one second as we wrap up here. Our contact information, of course, is tacklingcollegesports.com. Make sure you sign up with your first name and email to be included in the Friday 5, a weekly email of 5 sports-related items that we think would be of interest to you, the TCS Nation. Email us, of course, at info@tacklingcollegesports.com. And Facebook, we're at Tackling College Sports, and Twitter, Tackling College, and Instagram, guess what? That's Tackling College too. And until next time, be your best.
Be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.